I am a prince of the Liang dynasty. In my most glorious years, I degraded the now all-powerful Lord Chamberlain Lysander Fletcher. I trampled on his mutilation, mocking him for his inadequacy. After I fell from grace, Lysander played with me until I broke. Even without that thing, this servant has countless ways to please your highness. So what if I'm a eunuch? A eunuch's pleasures are many indeed. I was sprawled across Lysander's lap like a mess of boneless refuse. Lysander lowered his head, admiring my vacant expression. His long, elegant fingers, glistening with moisture, wiped themselves slowly on my waist. I had already wept myself out, my limbs soft and strengthless. I never knew a eunuch could possess such methods. He had more ways to torment a person than any normal man. I, a magnificent prince of the great Liang dynasty, had displayed such a pathetic state before a eunuch. Completely at his mercy, despicable. Despicable, I swung my hand and slapped Lysander across the face. I did it with the hand wearing a ring on purpose. It not only reddened that fair, handsome face, but also cut a thin, bloody line across his cheek. I cursed through gritted teeth, "You reckless mutt." A moment ago, my crying and cursing hadn't earned me a shred of pity from him. Lysander had relished the sight of me, trapped in his control, a debased creature unable to escape. His expression was manic, his pupils dilated in a state of extreme excitement. He had pinned me down like a fish on a cutting board, slaughtering me again and again. Lysander didn't argue. He rubbed his thumb over the bloody scratch on his face and admitted his fault with zero sincerity. It is this servant's error. He showed not a hint of remorse. It was clear he was far from finished and would dare to do it again, of course. With his current status, why would he ever need to bow his head to me? Lashing out at him would gain me nothing. It was I who was being foolish. I lay listlessly on his lap, fiddling with the ring on my finger. "How is my mother? Thanks to your highness's benevolence, Grand Concubine Isidora's illness has greatly improved. It was about time. She'd been sick all winter. If I hadn't come begging to Lysander, stripping off my clothes to let him toy with me, she likely would have died from her illness. Lord 9,000 years. Such a dog-slave was now revered as a lord just shy of the emperor. And I, the true prince, had become a defeated dog, living in constant fear. Ever since I lost the War of Succession and the new emperor ascended the throne, I was no longer the honored fourth prince, Alaric Lancaster. I couldn't even summon an imperial physician. The new emperor, my brother Julian, wouldn't see me. All doors were closed to me. And so, on the day of the first snow, I went to beg the one person I least wanted to see. A charcoal brazier burned in Lysander's chamber, melting the fine snowflakes from my hair and brows. The warmth was enough to make one want to cry. He was dressed in the crimson and gold uniform of the Eastern Depot, lounging on a couch and casually teasing the cat in his arms. Your Highness knows full well that if His Majesty wants the Grand Concubine dead, no one can save her. Lysander was speaking the truth. If he weren't, I wouldn't have come to him. The only person who had the new emperor's ear was Lysander. After all, it was Lysander who had overcome all opposition to put Julian on the throne. I clenched my fists and lowered my head. For the sake of our past, I beg you, our past, Lysander scoffed, looking up at me. Your Highness, is there anything left between you and me? There once was, but not anymore. During the struggle for the throne, Lysander had sided with Julian. He had hurt me, and I had humiliated him. Whatever bond we once had was now nothing but bitter hatred. I was speechless. Your Highness, when you beg someone, you should look the part. I can save the Grand Concubine, but what will your Highness give me in return? What could I give? I had nothing left. What do you want? Lysander paused. He released the cat, wiped his hands with a handkerchief, and said, "Strip." My mind went blank, a storm of shock and rage. What did you say? The flickering lamplight danced on his face, which was so handsome it was almost demonic. He repeated in a level tone, "Take off your clothes. I want to have a look at your Highness." He tossed the handkerchief into the brazier, warming his long, pale hands over the flames. How completely you strip is how thoroughly the Grand Concubine recovers. That day, I shattered my pride, peeling off my magnificent robes layer by layer. I stripped away the dignity of the royal house along with them. Lysander pressed me onto his lap and played with me, inside and out. When the torment was unbearable, I bit his arm and wept, calling his name in the throes of passion. But Lysander remained cold, as if no amount of lewdness could stir the slightest interest in him. It wasn't because he was missing that certain part, it was simply because he had no interest in me. Even as a eunuch, he had no interest in me. Lysander didn't like me, but he knew exactly which methods would humiliate me the most. He only wanted to use this to get back at me, to avenge the humiliation I had once inflicted upon him. The white cat crouched by his feet, looking up at me curiously, meowing. Lysander was toying with me as he would a cat. To think he would bully me to this extent, I bit his arm until I drew blood. Lysander pinched my face and touched my teeth, smiling. Such sharp teeth. My face was streaked with tears as I trembled against his legs. Lysander's gaze darkened for a moment. He released me, but his words offered no quarter. "You can't take this already. You're more delicate than a rice dumpling," comparing me to a cat. I immediately clamped my mouth shut and bit his finger. Lysander didn't move, letting me bite him until his hand was slick with blood. With his free hand, he idly stroked my hair twice. Always biting. "One of these days, I'll have to file down those sharp teeth of yours." I spent the entire winter at the Eastern Depot. Only when my mother had fully recovered did I return to the fragrance hall, but the palace maids blocked me at the entrance. The grand concubine was awake, but she wasn't receiving visitors, not even me. 3 days later, my mother requested permission to leave the palace to guard the late emperor's tomb. She didn't even see me to say goodbye. I chased her carriage past several palace walls, trying to call out to it. I fell, scrambled back up, and kept running. I was stopped outside the martial gate. Lysander wrapped an arm around my waist. "Stop chasing. She's long gone from the palace. Where are you even running to?" The road ahead was empty. There was no carriage. I shoved Lysander away like a madman, my eyes red as I screamed. Get lost, all of you. Get lost. Just go, all of you. Leave. Don't leave me anything, just leave me utterly alone, trapped to die in this palace." Lysander frowned, clamping a hand over my mouth and pinning me against the palace wall. "What are you shouting for? You worthless thing. You can't function without your mother." I glared at him viciously. Lysander wasn't the least bit intimidated. He softened his tone as if coaxing a child. "I won't leave. How about I be your mother?" I couldn't push him away. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at him. Lysander stared at me for a moment. "Don't cry," he said. I cried harder. What business was it of his? He didn't want me either, just like my mother. Lysander wasn't always a eunuch. He was Lucian Mortimer, son of the Minister of Justice, Lord Alastair Mortimer. At 8, he became famous for a single epic poem. The Sage King himself praised him as a dragon in a pond, selecting him to be a study companion for my brother, the Crown Prince. When I was 5, Lucian stole my candied fruit. At 6, he took me to steal birds' eggs. At 7, he tricked me into calling him brother with a sugar figurine. At 9, he conned me into fishing out the most expensive koi in the imperial garden to roast and eat. My mother, Grand Concubine Isidora, was so furious her hair stood on end. She grabbed my ear and yelled, "Stay away from that little demon from the Mortimer family from now on." So, Lucian taught me how to climb walls and crawl through doggy doors instead. When I was 13, the Crown Prince was accused of treason and sentenced to death. The Mortimer family was implicated along with him. 3 generations of the Mortimer clan were executed. Only Lucian survived by entering the palace, becoming the young eunuch Lysander Fletcher. It wasn't me who saved him. It was my second brother, Julian Lancaster. Julian knelt before the king's study in the snow for half a day to save Lysander's life. His already frail body became even weaker, afflicted with an incurable illness. Lysander once said he would rather have died than have Julian kneel for him and be burdened with a lifetime of sickness. Lysander's heart ached for Julian. But that day, I had also knelt in the fragrance hall for a day and a night, bruising my forehead as I begged my mother to let me out, begged her to save Lysander. But in the end, I was powerless. Lysander entered Julian's orchid hall, and we became strangers. I thought he blamed me for not saving him. I once tried to explain myself in a hushed voice on a palace path, trying every means I could think of to have him transferred to my fragrance hall. But Lysander refused. He said he wanted to stay by Julian's side. He said, "The 4th Prince Alaric is showered with every kind of favor. The 2nd Prince, Julian, has nothing. I have to stay with him. Of all the favors showered upon me, the only one I lacked was Lysander's." He gave the affection that should have been mine to Julian. Later, the rivalry between Julian and me for the throne grew more intense. My personal attendant, Pip, slipped and fell into a pond, drowning. Pip had been with me for years. When Lucian and I used to sneak out to play as children, he would cover for me. Pip was good at rubbing my stomach. Whenever I ate too much and my stomach hurt, he was always the one to soothe the ache. And Pip was killed by Lysander's own hand. Pip knew how to swim. He climbed out of the pond 3 times, and each time, Lysander kicked him back in until he finally didn't climb out again. I hated Lysander. I hated him so much I couldn't sleep. I used our father's influence to have Lysander transferred to the fragrance hall. I whipped him, grabbing him by the collar and demanding to know why he had killed Pip. Lysander gave a low laugh. Because he was in the second prince's way. I slapped him across the face. Truly, Julian's loyal dog. The servants all say you've become Julian's plaything. I didn't believe it at first, but now I see I overestimated you. I stomped on his mutilated flesh. Can you even play without that thing? Tell me, how do you serve Julian? Lysander let me stomp on him, enduring the pain and smiling to himself. Is your highness jealous? His words stung me like a wasp. My heart seized with a sharp pain. Rage consumed me and I kicked him away. I protected my own heart with the most venomous words I could muster. I was a prince. Was I supposed to kneel and beg this heartless, ungrateful slave for a scrap of affection? Jealous, I only feel disgusted. My brother must have a strong stomach. What kind of pleasure could he get from a rootless thing like you? Isn't he afraid of getting dirty? I forced a contemptuous smile, my eyes crimson as I ground my heel down with malicious intent, tormenting him like a man possessed. I wanted him to hurt, I wanted him to hate, I wanted him to hurt and hate just as much as I did. I gave you a chance to be a man, but you refused it, so be a good dog for me instead. Lysander stayed in the fragrance hall for 1.5 years, during which I unleashed all my hatred and anger upon him. He always endured it in silence, with his head bowed and eyes lowered, until he was transferred out of the fragrance hall to the central palace, to serve by our father's side. Later, Lysander rose through the ranks, becoming our father's favorite, the head of the Eastern Depot and the chief eunuch scribe. After our father, King Thuron, passed away, Lysander supported Julian's ascension to the throne, abandoning me completely. During the royal spring hunt, the new emperor Julian finally seemed to remember me, the loser in the War of Succession. He invited me to join him at the hunting grounds. When it was time to depart, a young eunuch came to summon me. As I neared the carriage, I heard laughter from within. The new emperor was being petulant. I made a bad move just now. I'm not playing theirs. Lysander's voice emerged. Your Majesty, a move once made cannot be taken back. So what if I take it back? Lysander sighed, his tone patient. It is nothing. You are the emperor. Whatever you do is right. The new emperor laughed twice, then broke into a cough. The young eunuch announced my arrival in a low voice. I boarded the carriage with my eyes downcast. Without looking up, I knelt properly, prostrating myself on the floor. Your servant, Alaric Lancaster, pays his respects to your Majesty. May your Majesty live 10,000 years. The carriage fell silent for a moment. Then came another fit of coughing, followed by Julian's gentle voice. It has only been a few days and you've become so docile. You've truly grown distant from me. I kept my eyes lowered. Your younger brother wouldn't dare. Julian sounded displeased. Stop kneeling. Get up. I obediently rose. I saw Lysander holding a small bowl, stirring a pear water tonic with a spoon. When it cooled, he handed it to Julian and said, "Drink." He was not without gentleness and consideration. It was just never for me. The one Lysander favored from beginning to end was always Julian. Even the throne was won for Julian by Lysander. Once I was our father's most beloved son, but on his deathbed he named Julian his successor. The edict was delivered by Lysander. I didn't believe it. The court ministers didn't believe it either, but Lysander silenced all dissent, killing a few men and brutally forcing Julian onto the throne. He knew perfectly well how much I wanted to be emperor. He knew how much my mother and I had worked for that position. He knew that between Julian and me, if one ascended, the other would not be allowed to live. He knew all of it, but he chose Julian. In truth, Lysander had always chosen Julian. I was the fool to think I could ever compete with him. Only after falling did I realize that what was never mine could not be won by fighting. Now, utterly defeated, I had accepted it. I am a son of the royal house. What kind of servant could I not have? Was it really worth feeling heartbroken over a castrated official? While Julian and I played chess, he mentioned that I was getting older and that he wanted to arrange a marriage for me. I was filled with trepidation, thanking him for his imperial grace. Lysander kept his eyes down, playing with the prayer beads on his wrist, saying nothing. In the afternoon, Julian had someone deliver portraits of eligible young women. I flipped through them one by one in the carriage. The portraits had been carefully selected. They were all daughters of former supporters of the second prince, now loyal ministers and generals. Julian wanted to tie me down with a marriage. He was afraid the throne beneath him wasn't stable. If you ask me, Julian is too hypocritical. He's soft-hearted, afraid of earning a bad name, and that's why he hesitates to move against me. If I had been the one to ascend the throne, I would have killed him on the very first day. By the time Lysander arrived, I had already picked out two. Lysander picked up the thin sheets of paper and examined them closely. The eldest daughter of the Zhang family practices martial arts. She's fierce. You wouldn't be able to handle her. As for the one from the Song family, Lysander held the paper to a candle flame. She is frail and sickly, not a good match. Both portraits were burned. I wasn't angry. Julian had sent a thick stack. I was sure to find one. Resting my head on my hand, I pulled out another. Rosalind Zhao. Her family is respectable. She has a good temperament and she's cute. I suddenly remembered the young lady and smiled as I studied the portrait. I've seen her. She's small and round like a little rabbit. Why did the artist make her look so plain? Lysander said. Miss Zhao was betrothed to someone a few days ago. I frowned. How come I didn't know? Lysander snatched the portrait from my hand. If I say she's betrothed, she's betrothed. He slowly crumpled it into a ball and said in a flat voice, I will report to His Majesty that you found no one to your liking. I was annoyed now. But I did. Lysander's head snapped up, his gaze dark. Your Highness wishes to marry. I sneered. Am I not allowed? Lysander smiled, then raised a hand and cupped my face. When your Highness and I are in our wedding chambers, I'm afraid there will be no place for the bride. Lysander, you dare. Does your Highness think I wouldn't dare? Lysander was smiling, but there was a calm madness in it. Your Highness has me. Do you still want others? His touch made my hips go weak, and I gripped his sleeve tightly. Lysander lifted my face, his lips brushing against mine. Can anyone else make your Highness feel this good? Could they serve your Highness better than I do? I stared at him, fighting back a surging wave of desire, and said through red-rimmed eyes, disgusting. Lysander's movements froze. His grip on my face tightened. What did you say? Just that one word ignited his fury. Having been castrated, it was the one thing Lysander couldn't bear to hear. And the more he didn't want to hear it, the more I wanted to say it. My malice overflowed. I felt a thrill of revenge. I repeated word for word, Lysander, you are truly disgusting. Every time you touch me, I feel as sick as if I've swallowed a fly. Lysander's pupils constricted as if he'd been stabbed. The hand holding my face trembled. He let out a sinister laugh, stuffed his silk sash into my mouth, and tore my clothes apart with near brutal force, using every trick he knew on my body. I whimpered, I trembled, I died again and again. Lysander, like a man possessed, repeatedly asked, Does your Highness find this disgusting? This expression doesn't look like disgust. I truly wish I could place a bronze mirror before your Highness so you could see just how much you want me. When it was over, I felt as if I'd been dragged out of water. I was sobbing and shaking uncontrollably. Lysander finally seemed to calm down, stroking my trembling back soothingly. Alaric, be good. Don't provoke me anymore. I had no strength left, but I still pushed at him defiantly. At my lowest, I am still a prince. Since when was it my turn to please you? I lowered my eyes and sneered. You are nothing but a vile castrated slave. Lysander didn't get angry. He just silently helped me dress. Then he knelt, placed my foot on his knee, and put on my socks. How would I dare ask you to please me? His large hand enveloped my foot, giving it a gentle squeeze before putting on my shoe. I am whatever you say I am, but since your Highness still has use for me, it is best not to speak words that cut so deep. If this servant were to act recklessly, it would be your Highness who suffers. Insolence, I wrenched myself free and kicked him in the mouth. Get the hell away from me. I don't know what Lysander told Julian, but Julian never mentioned the marriage proposal again. On the third day of the autumn hunt, Julian and I were chasing a deer together deep into the forest. We were ambushed, we were outnumbered. Julian was knocked off his horse, his back to me, completely defenseless. A vicious glint flashed in my eyes. I tightened my grip on my sword. If in the chaos, I killed Julian. I could take back what was rightfully mine. The thought had barely formed when an arrow shot past my cheek with a rush of wind and embedded itself in the chest of the assassin in front of me. It sliced off a few strands of my hair. Instantly, Lysander rode past, his cold gaze sweeping over me without a moment's pause as he resolutely shielded Julian. Lysander's stare made me freeze. He was warning me not to touch Julian. In that moment of distraction, an assassin's longsword pierced my shoulder. I let out a muffled grunt. Lysander's head snapped toward me, his eyes fixing on the sword buried in my flesh, his gaze sinister. Julian, his face pale, watched as I was swarmed by assassins, and commanded Lysander. "Go save Alaric, he's badly hurt, don't worry about me." Lysander stood before Julian, long knife at the ready. "This servant is only concerned with your majesty's safety." As for the fourth prince, his eyes were downcast, his expression unreadable, his voice very soft. "Your majesty can rest assured. The fourth prince has a charmed life, he will be fine." I twisted my lips into a sneer. As long as Julian was here, I could die and not even earn a single glance from him. Lysander swung his blade, cutting down enemies. Blood splattered across his face, but he didn't even blink. In a matter of moments, assassins lay dead all around, their bodies gruesomely mangled. The last one to die was the one who had stabbed me. Lysander took a long time killing him. He smiled, toying with him like a cat with a mouse, dismembering him piece by piece. Hand, foot, arm, leg, and finally the head. My strength gave out. I collapsed to my knees, leaning on my sword, my consciousness fading. I heard Julian coughing on the ground. I sneered inwardly. What was he coughing for? These assassins weren't even after him. He probably didn't have a single scratch on him. Lysander's boots paused in front of me. He sheathed his blade, turned and strode toward Julian. He scooped him up, mounted his horse, and left me with only a single sentence. "Your Highness, hold on. I'll go back and send someone to rescue you." Without another look at me, he galloped away. I lay sprawled on my back on the ground. I was losing too much blood. I swallowed down what rose in my throat. I hoped the palace servants would find me before I died. I cheated death. When I woke up, it was 2 days later. I overheard the servants gossiping. Julian was fine for now. Lysander was investigating the assassins and had punished many people. One other thing. General Hawthorne, who had been guarding the border for 5 years, had returned to court and was now at the hunting lodge. I grabbed a young eunuch and asked, "Who did you say is back?" "General Hawthorne, sir." "General Gareth Hawthorne," the eunuch said. "A few days ago, it was the general who rescued your highness." My heart filled with joy. I jumped out of bed barefoot and rushed out of the tent. "Where is he?" "I want to see him." Several young eunuchs chased after me with my robes and shoes. Just as I rounded a screen, I was pulled into an embrace by someone who had just entered. A pair of cold hands pinched my face. "And where is your highness going?" The servants instantly fell silent, bowing their heads as they filed out. I knew it was Lysander. Beneath his incense, I smelled the faint scent of blood. I didn't know where he'd come from, but the smell of blood disgusted me. I pushed at him frantically, but he overpowered me. I arched backward, freeing a hand to slap him hard across the face. Let go. Lysander's head turned slightly, his fair skin flushing red. He didn't get angry. He just carried me to the bed, picked up my feet, and gave them a squeeze. "It's getting cold, don't run around barefoot. Your wounds haven't healed yet. You should be resting quietly. It's best not to see people who are unimportant." Lysander lowered his gaze, pulled open his robes, and pressed my cold feet against his searing hot abdomen to warm them. Just a few days ago, he had abandoned me in the forest without a second glance. Now that his precious emperor was soothed, he was back here, fawning over me. He clearly detested me, yet he kept me on a leash, never letting me go. "Despicable, Lord Lysander needn't trouble himself with such false concern," I said, pulling my feet away with a soft laugh. "A wound like this won't kill me, but if you visit me a few more times and your master finds out, then I truly won't survive. I've already been worn down to half a life by you. Just do me a favor and let me go." Lysander stared at his empty hands, his fingers curling slightly. "Are you angry with me? Are you angry that I stopped you from killing Julian, or that I didn't take you with me first?" I stared at him for a long moment, then burst out laughing. I laughed until my stomach hurt. "Lord Lysander, you overestimate yourself. Do I need a reason to be angry with you? You are His Majesty's dog. It's only natural that you put him first. What do I count for? I'm just sick of this act of yours. Since you're His Majesty's dog, stop wagging your tail at me." Lysander toyed with the jade beads on his wrist and said softly, "When you need me, I'm the best thing in the world and everything I do is right." He let out a soft, self-mocking scoff. "When you don't need me, I'm a dog again, something you despise." He sighed, lifted his eyes, and smiled faintly. "Fine, if you say I'm a dog, then I'm a dog." He grabbed my ankle and placed a moist kiss on the sole of my foot. He licked and kissed his way up my ankle. "Your Highness, I've had enough of the whip, it's time for a bone." Does he have no shame? I kicked at him furiously. He didn't let go. I was pinned down and slaughtered by Lysander once again. He had too many tricks. At first I scratched at him, but soon he had churned me into a sopping wet rag, soiling his new clothes. I thought angrily that they shouldn't have just castrated him. They should have cut off his hands and tongue too. That would have robbed him of all his wicked tools of torment. As I thought this, I reached for his waist and snatched his command token. The assassination attempt at the hunting grounds had gone unsolved for days. Neither Julian nor Lysander seemed concerned, which made me realize the truth. What assassination? It was clearly a play directed by Julian himself. He was testing me. If it hadn't been for Lysander's arrow that day, and I had actually raised my sword against Julian, I would likely be long dead by now. Julian didn't trust me. That suspicion would sooner or later grow into a towering tree. I needed to make plans. I secretly summoned Griffin Hawthorne to the palace. Griffin understood my situation. If your highness is not faring well here, then come with me to Thorn. If there was anyone in this palace I trusted, it was Griffin. Griffin was the illegitimate son of the Hawthorne family, born to a servant, and was relentlessly bullied as a child. At that time, my father had asked me to choose a study companion. From all the Hawthorne sons, I pointed to the scrawny Griffin. I want him. My father was puzzled. I kicked my legs and laughed mischievously. He looks easier to bully, but I could bully him. No one else could. I dealt with the Hawthorne heirs who had bullied him. Afterward, Griffin clutched my sleeve, wiping his tears, and swore his loyalty to me. I kicked him in annoyance. That had been my favorite robe. Griffin was a simpleton. I wasn't particularly good to him. I'd casually give him pastries I didn't like, clothes I found ugly, or old gold and jewels I no longer used. And he was eternally grateful. Griffin always said, "Your Highness is the kindest person." 7 years ago, when Griffin left, he said, "Your Highness's wings are growing, but you lack real power. This servant is willing to be your Highness's sword." He said, "Griffin is not a subject of the Liang dynasty. He is a subject of your Highness." In Griffin's heart, there was no country, only his prince. He killed enemies, but not for the nation. He was my sharpest blade, my closest confidant. There was no one left for me in this palace. Not rebelling was waiting to die. Rebelling might offer a sliver of hope. I decided to go to Thorn. There were soldiers in Thorn. With Lysander's token, I passed through the Dawn Gate. But I didn't see Griffin. I only saw Lysander, stroking the white cat in his arms, standing outside the gate. Behind him stood a row of his embroidered guard. He asked in a slow, deliberate voice, "And where might your Highness be going?" Seeing Lysander meant one thing: Griffin had been captured. Lysander walked slowly toward me, placed the white cat in my arms, unfastened his cloak, and draped it over my shoulders. His cool fingers tilted my chin up. "It's so cold." "Why run out in the middle of the night? Look at you, your face is pale from the cold." The white cat in my arms gave a lazy yawn. Lysander fastened the cloak for me, wrapped an arm around my waist, and said, "This servant will escort your Highness back to the palace." The charcoal braziers were already lit inside the fragrance hall. The white cat leaped from my arms and curled up by the fire. Lysander knelt before the couch and began to undo my robes, not mentioning Griffin at all. "This servant will help your Highness change." I abruptly pulled the pin from my hair and pressed it to his neck. "Where is Griffin?" Lysander was utterly fearless, his expression unchanged. "General Hawthorne attacked the palace tonight in an assassination attempt. He has been taken to the Eastern Depot's dungeons for interrogation. That charge was a death sentence. Once you entered the Eastern Depot, truth and lies were whatever came from Lysander's mouth." I pressed the hairpin forward slightly, grinding my teeth. "Don't you dare slander him. Griffin would never attempt an assassination." "Then tell me, if not for an assassination, why would a court official enter the palace without a summons and not seek an audience with His Majesty?" Lysander grabbed my wrist, leaned closer, and stared into my eyes, his gaze cold and menacing. Could it be he came specifically to steal my cat? His lips twisted into a grimace. "If that's the case," he said in a sinister voice, "then he deserves to die even more." He knew everything. He had remained silent, just waiting for it to happen so he could make his move. Leaving the palace was my idea. "It has nothing to do with Griffin. Let him go." Lysander smiled. "Is your Highness begging me?" He slowly removed the prayer beads from his wrist, his gaze insolent. "I've taught your Highness before. When you beg someone, you should look the part." The sight of those beads made my legs weak. I wished I could plunge the pin in my hand into his neck and end it all. Damned eunuch this time, Lysander was more ruthless than ever before. My cries couldn't stop him. By the time the rooster crowed, I couldn't even open my eyes. Lysander brushed aside the damp hair clinging to my face. "Why did you try to run away with Griffin?" I kept my eyes closed and sneered. "Julian will kill me sooner or later. Should I just wait here to die?" Lysander was silent for a moment, then sighed. Why can't you ever see the truth? Julian has been on the throne for a full year, and haven't I kept you alive and well? My eyes snapped open. What do you mean? Trust me this once, your highness. Lysander looked at me, his expression calm and certain. When I say your highness has a charmed life, then you are destined for a charmed life. I won't let you die. You cannot die. He placed a kiss on the crown of my head. Alaric, don't be afraid. Only Lucian could call me Alaric. What was Lysander? Who was he to speak my name? I frowned in disgust. Don't call me that. You are a slave. You should call me your highness. Lysander laughed, a sound devoid of humor, and pinched my cheek. So now I'm not even allowed to say your name. My eyes were filled with loathing. You lost that right a long time ago. Lysander's eyelashes fluttered. He reached out to touch my eyes. What is this look? Have I made you? He seemed unable to believe it. Have I made you despise me this much? What else? I found it laughable. Lysander, shouldn't I despise you? My hatred was thick and suffocating. If it weren't for you, would I, a prince, be forced to submit to a vile, castrated official just for protection? Lysander abruptly covered my eyes with his hand and sealed my mouth with his lips and tongue. His voice trembled. Enough, don't say any more. I never saw Griffin. Lysander told me he had been ordered back to Thorn to resume his post. I sent a letter to Thorn, and the reply confirmed what Lysander had said, but I was suspicious. I coaxed a young eunuch from the Eastern Depot, asking him if anyone had been released from the dungeons recently. The eunuch said anyone who enters the Eastern Depot's dungeons goes in vertically and comes out horizontally. No one's been sent to clean up any bodies lately, so no one's been released. My heart sank. That night, disguised as a eunuch, I slipped into the Eastern Depot and saw Griffin, tortured into unconsciousness. Lysander had lied to me. On my way back, I ran into Julian. He was alone, without attendants, carrying a palace lantern as he walked toward me. I bowed my head to avoid his gaze and knelt on the ground. After a long silence, I cautiously looked up and saw the hem of Julian's robe had stopped right in front of me. Been to the Eastern Depot. His voice, neither heavy nor light, drifted down. Did you see the person you wanted to see? Since he already knew, what was the point in pretending? I didn't rise. Instead, I lowered myself further. General Hawthorne's crimes do not warrant death. I implore your majesty to see clearly. Your majesty, Julian said airily. I am not your majesty. My scalp prickled. I didn't know what he meant. Could he have guessed my intent to rebel and was now warning me? The lantern fell to the ground. Julian knelt in front of me, his cold hands lifting my face. His features were gentle. I am your brother. The dim, yellow light cast a soft glow on his pale face. I froze for a second. Julian cupped my cheeks, the pad of his thumb stroking my skin. Alaric, Lysander can't be trusted. Beg me. If you beg me, I'll help you save Griffin. Just like in the winter of the 35th year of the Kyan era, when you begged me to save Lucian. Beg me. A light snowflake landed on my face, and I shuddered violently. A hazy memory suddenly sharpened. In the winter of the 35th year of the Kyan era, I knelt in the fragrance hall for a night, begging my mother to save Lucian. At dawn, my head was spinning. Someone had come then. They had supported my body, given me water, and asked why I was doing this to myself. I was delirious, only able to repeat, save Lucian, save Lucian. I had clutched their sleeve, pleading helplessly, please, I beg you, save Lucian. That person was silent for a long time before replying with a single word, all right. I had thought it was a hallucination brought on by my desperation. But it turned out someone had really been there. The faint scent of medicine seemed to merge with that dream from 8 years ago. Snowflakes melted on Julian's eyelashes. His clouded gaze swept gently, densely, over my features. You've forgotten. Your brother has always granted your every request. It's just that you rarely ask me for anything. Things were different now. I didn't trust Julian. Everything came at a price. I watched him warily. If you help me, what do you want in return? Julian let out a small laugh, then lowered his head and coughed into his hand. He coughed so hard his whole body shook, and he swayed as if he would fall. I instinctively reached out to steady him, but he seized my hand and pulled me into his arms. Julian rested his chin on my shoulder, using me for support as he coughed relentlessly. He forced himself to stop long enough to get a full sentence out. Then, weave me a grasshopper. I smelled blood. Julian was coughing up blood. I said, get up, I'll take you back to your palace. Julian leaned his entire weight on me. It was as if he were holding me and I were holding him. No strength, he said lazily. Can't get up, I'm about to cough myself to death. I gritted my teeth, wrapped an arm around his waist, and hauled him to his feet. Julian was tall but frighteningly thin, as if he were nothing but a bundle of dry bones. He shamelessly draped an arm over my shoulders, leaning on me and making an unreasonable demand. "Not back to my palace. Let's go to Alaric's fragrance hall. My palace is too cold." The charcoal fire in the hall burned brightly. Julian sat on my bed, wrapped in my quilt, watching me without blinking as I wove a grasshopper from bamboo strips. It was a trick an old eunuch had taught me. I used to love making these little things as a child. When I finished one, I handed it to Julian. He played with it for a long while, his face full of smiles. The candlelight reflected in his eyes, making them shine. After a few moments, he started coughing again and had to put the grasshopper down. "Alaric," he said, "why is your hall so cold too?" "It wasn't the hall that was cold, it was him." "I'll summon the imperial physician," I said. Julian grabbed my wrist. "No need, I know my own fate." His thumb rubbed against my wrist. "You're warm though, come up and warm me." I stood still. I was calculating my chances of success if I killed him right now. Julian seemed to read my mind. No need to be in such a hurry for my life. "I don't have many days left anyway." I looked at his pale face. He was right. Besides, I didn't want to cause trouble at this juncture. Saving Griffin was the priority. Right now, the only person who could counter Lysander was Julian. I took off my outer robe and got onto the bed. Julian pulled me under the covers, using me as a furnace. "Your Majesty, about General Hawthorne." Julian hugged me from behind, his eyes closed, chin resting on my shoulder. "Don't be anxious," he said drowsily. "He's coming." He slid his hand under my inner tunic, pressing it against my stomach and letting out a sigh of contentment. A guard at the door announced Lysander's arrival. He entered, bringing a gust of wind and snow with him. He stared at me for a long moment, then lowered his gaze. Without bowing, he said respectfully, "Your Majesty, it is time to return to your palace." Julian acted as if he hadn't heard, nuzzling the side of my neck. "I hear you've arrested my dear Minister Hawthorne." Lysander didn't even raise an eyelid. He was released several days ago. General Hawthorne received his orders and left for Thorn half a fortnight ago. A mouthful of lies, I pressed down on Julian's hand, which was wandering too far, and took a deep breath. "Your Majesty," I said, "perhaps you should send someone to check the Eastern Depot's dungeons." Julian obediently let me hold his hand in place and smiled. "As you wish." Julian sent a man to the Eastern Depot. Lysander stood there silently, counting the jade beads on his wrist. The pad of his finger rubbed against the smooth surface. I suddenly shivered. For a split second, I thought I knew what he was thinking. I looked up and met his gaze. His pupils were pitch black, like bottomless abysses. After a long wait, the attendant returned and reported that Griffin was indeed still in the dungeon, but had now been released on verbal command. Julian looked at Lysander. "Minister Fletcher, what do you have to say?" Lysander smiled. "My subordinates were incompetent and failed to follow orders. I will deal with them when I return. Your Majesty, it is late. You should return to your palace and rest." Before Julian could reply, Lysander called out, "Guards, escort His Majesty back to the palace." Julian was practically dragged away. Lysander didn't even look back at him. His eyes fell on my disheveled clothes, torn open by Julian. He unfastened his own sash and walked toward me, his gaze sinister and cold. "Someone prepare water." His stare made my skin crawl. I put on a brave face and threw a candlestick at him. "Get out, stay away from me." The candlestick struck him on the temple. Blood trickled into his eye, staining it a faint red. But Lysander didn't retreat. He tied me up, threw me into a wooden tub and held me down, scrubbing me. "Your Highness is sullied. This servant will wash you clean. Once you're clean, I won't be angry anymore." He held me down, forcing me to lean over the edge of the tub as he washed me inside and out. I gripped the rim of the tub, gritting my teeth and enduring his defilement. My anger peaked and then cooled into a chilling calm. If I was going to suffer, Lysander wouldn't get off easy either. "Lysander, what other tricks do you have? It's always your hands or your mouth or some other object. Does using those cold things get you off? Even if you fill me up, I will never be yours." Lysander turned me over and grabbed my face. The blood from his forehead dripped onto my cheek. He was practically unhinged. "To serve your Highness, hands and a mouth are enough. Even if you are not mine, you are in my hands. I have ways to ensure your Highness has no strength to go looking for others. If this servant teaches you enough, your Highness will naturally learn to be obedient." He leaned down and crushed his lips to mine. The kiss was so deep I couldn't even swallow my own saliva. Lysander pulled back just before I suffocated, wiping the saliva from the corner of my mouth with his thumb. His other hand disappeared beneath the water. "I may not have that thing," he whispered, "but doesn't your highness?" He kissed his way down my chin, grasped my hips, and lifted me higher. "Does it matter if a servant like me is pleased? As long as your highness is satisfied, this servant is content." My body went rigid. I grabbed at his hair, wanting to die from the shame and fury. You dare, let go." Lysander pinned my wrists, his head still lowered. I clung to the tub, rocking with the water inside. I dissolved into a puddle myself, dog slave. "Just you wait. The day I regain power, I will repay this humiliation 100-fold." Julian and Lysander seemed to be at odds, and Julian's health was clearly failing. This became my opportunity. I met secretly with Griffin and told him to return to Thorn and assemble his troops, awaiting my command. Griffin asked, "Is your highness not coming with me to Thorn?" "You go on your own," I said. "I have things to do here. Your highness intends to rebel." What an ugly word, rebel. I fiddled with the thumb ring on my hand and smiled. "This prince is merely following the will of heaven to take back the position that rightfully belongs to me." Griffin bowed his head and was silent for a long time. "Why must your highness do this?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "That position has never belonged to you." The words had barely left his mouth when a sword tip was at my throat, less than half an inch away. An arrow whistled through the air and pierced Griffin's heart. The sword clattered to the ground as Griffin collapsed. I had narrowly escaped death. After the shock came a towering rage. "You tried to kill me." I dropped to my knees, grabbed Griffin by the collar, my eyes feeling as if they would split. "Why? I trusted you completely, and you tried to kill me." Blood trickled from the corner of Griffin's mouth. "The Sage King's command cannot be disobeyed. The late Emperor, a secret decree, if your highness rebels, execute immediately." Tears streamed down his face, yet he gritted his teeth and raised a dagger. But before he could plunge it into my heart, he took his last breaths. It felt absurd. My father who had doted on me so, had left behind such a secret order before his death. Lysander walked in, holding a longbow. He kicked Griffin's body and said in a low voice, just as I thought, "He's Dragon Shadow. He gave me quite a chase." He glanced at me. He knelt down and reached out to wipe the tears from my face. "What are you crying for? I told you not to see him, but you insisted. I told you not to save him, but you insisted." "You were thoroughly deceived, weren't you?" He sighed, as if he couldn't bear it, and then tried to soothe me. "All right, he wasn't Griffin Hawthorne. He was Griffin's twin brother. His real name was Gareth. He was chosen for the Dragon Guard as a child, and was its successor, the spymaster codenamed Dragon Shadow. He was loyal only to the late Emperor Thuron. He was never your man to begin with, so it's not a betrayal. He's not worth your tears." I looked up at him, my eyes bloodshot. "You knew all along, didn't you? That's why Lysander had suppressed the court officials, to prevent me from having any chance to rebel. With Dragon Shadow's identity unknown, if I had rebelled then, I would have certainly died. And the one who wanted me dead was the father who had supposedly loved me most. Tell me, did our father ever intend for me to inherit the throne? Tell me, what was all that past affection? What did it mean?" Lysander stared at me for a moment, then let out a low, sarcastic laugh. "He never intended for anyone to inherit the throne except Julian. How do you think the crown prince died, your highness?" he scoffed. "Treason? He was already the crown prince. What need was there for treason? Back then, Emperor Thuron showered Grand Concubine Isidora with so much favor that her power eclipsed the empress's, giving her the audacity to frame and kill the crown prince. He also gave you unparalleled honor, making you believe you had a chance to contend for the throne. Insolence." I grabbed Lysander's collar in a rage. "What does the crown prince's death have to do with my mother? Don't you dare make baseless accusations." "Baseless accusations?" Lysander looked at me calmly. "Regarding what Grand Concubine Isidora did back then, does your highness truly know nothing at all?" His gaze seared me, throwing my thoughts into chaos. Back then I had overheard my mother's secret plotting, but it was only a few words. I thought at most it would lead to the crown prince's deposition. I never imagined so many people would die. Lysander's gaze was clear, like a sharp sword, dissecting the darkest corners of my heart. "Your highness simply played deaf and dumb. You wanted that throne too badly. Compared to your ambition, what was the crown prince? What was Lucian Mortimer? Your highness resents me for betraying you, but my family, hundreds of lives, how could you expect me to let that go? I was castrated and entered the palace, groveling for nearly a decade, investigating from Julian to your mother, and finally to the emperor himself. If it had been anyone else, do you think I would have shown mercy? But you were right in the middle of it all. Do you have any idea what I felt when my investigation led me to the fragrance hall? How I wished you were truly innocent. Anyone could have left me to die, but not you. It couldn't be you. Couldn't you have given me even a single word of warning? I shook my head, scrambling backward. Stop talking. Stop it, I didn't know. I truly didn't know it would be that serious. Lysander moved closer, wiping away my tears. He took a deep breath, his eyes red-rimmed, his voice steady. Your Highness's hatred for me is not 1/10,000th of my hatred for you. And your Highness's love for me is not 1/10,000th of my love for you. I have never cried, so what is your Highness crying for? He poked one of my dimples and gave me a crazed smile. Your Highness should be smiling. Dragon Shadow is dead. The secret decree is gone. There is nothing left to threaten your Highness. The thing you want will soon be yours. I just wonder if the throne, built on the bones of thousands, will truly make your Highness happy when you finally sit on it. Julian fell gravely ill and ceased holding court. State affairs were left entirely in Lysander's hands. The palace servants whispered that Julian had gone mad. He would often run out of the main hall and sing the reeds while running along the palace paths. I saw it once. Several eunuchs were chasing him with ropes. They pinned him to the ground, roughly trying to bind his hands and feet. Quick, tie him up and take him back. Julian was wearing only his inner tunic, struggling on the ground. He struck one of the eunuchs in the face, and the eunuch viciously twisted his arm in a spot no one could see. The scene was jarring. I drew a guard sword, strode forward, kicked the eunuch aside, and swung the sword, lopping off his head. He is the Emperor of Liang, how dare you dregs, who fawn on the powerful and trample the weak, insult him so brazenly. The eunuchs fell to their knees, silent as cicadas in winter. I dropped the sword, lifted Julian onto my back, and started walking toward the central palace. He felt even lighter than before, as if he might dissipate at any moment. Julian coughed on my back, blood staining my robes. He sang the reeds intermittently, as if he were trying to bleed himself dry. Then he stopped singing. He spoke to me. Lysander said you didn't like any of the brides I chose for you. I grunted in acknowledgement. The truth was, Lysander didn't like them. I had liked some of them. Julian spoke again. That day during the hunt, I know you wanted to kill me, because I wanted to kill you too. If you won't marry, if you won't be of use to me, then I can only kill you. Otherwise you will kill me. I grunted again. I had guessed as much. For either of us to live was a threat to the other. Julian said, you wove grasshoppers for everyone else. Why didn't you ever weave one for me? The Crown Prince had one, Lucian had one, even Pip had one. I said, Julian, I saw you kill my cat. Julian's mother died in childbirth. My father gave him to my mother to raise. Before the age of 12, Julian lived in the fragrance hall. As a child, I was very attached to Julian. The first word I ever said was mama, and the second was brother. But when I was 5, I saw with my own eyes my closest, most gentle brother kill my beloved kitten. His face was cold and venomous. My brother changed overnight. He became a stranger. I feared him, dreaded him, and hated him. Julian murmured, so you saw. After you got that cat, you weren't attached to me anymore. I just wanted you to go back to the way you were. Was that so wrong? Such a laughable reason. But our falling out wasn't just because of the cat. The father I adored had placed us on opposing sides, demanding that Julian step on me to reach the throne. From then on, 2 kings could not exist in the same court. When I carried Julian into his hall, he had already fallen unconscious. I then noticed his inner tunic was a terrible fit. The sleeves and legs were too short. On his long limbs, it looked cramped, and the exposed skin was purple from the cold. In a corner of the tunic, I saw an embroidered character. My name, Alaric. I looked around the bedchamber. On the desk sat 2 bamboo grasshoppers, one vibrant green, the other long since withered and yellow. I opened his wardrobe and found many old things, clothes I had lost years ago, a whole chest filled with my handkerchiefs, even my undergarments. I took a step back, only to see Julian had sat up in bed at some point and was watching me silently. A mix of shock and fury washed over me. I threw the clothes in my hand at his face. Where did all of this come from? Julian took the undergarments off his face, his expression placid. You forget, Pip was originally my servant. It wasn't difficult for him to bring me some of your things. His fingers caressed the soft fabric. A pity Lysander found an excuse to kill him later. After that, I couldn't get these things anymore. I didn't dare to imagine what was in Julian's mind when he collected these items. Fighting back my revulsion, I ordered the servants to take everything out and burn it. Julian screamed, his voice tearing. "No, those are mine." He threw himself at my feet, clutching the hem of my robe. "Don't burn them, please don't. They were clearly my things. When did they become his?" I heartlessly pushed him away and turned to leave. Julian knelt in the vast, empty hall, his head thrown back as if his soul had left his body. As I stepped out of the hall, I saw Lysander standing outside. He watched the great fire burning before the hall with a cold expression, gently stroking the cat in his arms. A young eunuch carrying a bowl of warm pear tonic brushed past me and entered the palace. Lysander looked up at the faint light of dawn. "Your Highness," he said to me, "the day is breaking." I stared at the blood-red sunrise, then suddenly turned and ran back into the hall. Just as I reached the entrance, I heard the sound of a porcelain bowl shattering. From inside came a young eunuch's grief-stricken shriek. "His Majesty is dead." Julian's incurable illness had been fed to him bowl by bowl of pear tonic from Lysander. After Julian's death, I became emperor, just as I had wished. Lysander became my closest attendant. He controlled the Eastern Depot, and he controlled my private chambers. After the grand coronation ceremony, in the vast central palace, on the spacious dragon throne, Lysander tore my imperial robes to shreds. He touched me, kissed me. I stared blankly into the vast night. I only felt cold. Only the places Lysander touched were searing hot. And so I looked down at the slave who was trying so desperately to please me. "Harder, Lysander. Useless thing, harder still, not enough, not enough, not enough. Lysander, hold me, don't let me be cold. End."